Whereas, right, organizationally, sometimes you're sort of like, I'm setting stuff up, I'm doing something to it, I'm outputting it. But why not say change, or sum up xy as a function, you call it, comes back, display xy, call it as a function, and then you've actually broken it into a top-down kind of approach here. What do you think about that idea? Blank lines, bad.
You get too many little helper methods.
The counterpoint to this is that all of a sudden you have a bunch of one-use little helper methods, maybe private methods or private functions or something, and you have to go track down and see what they actually do to make sure they're doing what you think they do. So I do think that's kind of a reasonable counterpoint. But I would say if you have a long function that actually does real work as opposed to basically doing nothing, and you find yourself spacing out big chunks of code with blank lines, I think it is a reasonable idea to think about breaking those into 2 or 3 functions that do those pieces instead. Try to make it a little more real. So, consider that, right? These are all suggestions of some kind. Notice also the testability that improves at some point, right? You can test each function separately and write unit tests for it, whereas sometimes these long ones are actually hard to write unit tests for. And in fact, I would say if you have a function or method you're having trouble writing a unit test for, it's probably because it's doing too much in there, and it's hard to get the data in that you want and the data out that you want. It might be nice to break into pieces. So long method for sure is a sign of trouble where your method just goes on and on and on and on. But this idea, if you can already sort of mentally break the function into multiple steps, maybe it's time to actually break it into multiple steps and write functions for it. So think about that. Actually, well, it's hard to know what this is really doing again, but how about rewrite this? Piece of paper, refactor this. Think about how to make it better. All right? So actually commit to paper some good version here.
And then get rid of the comment. This is like clean code. Right. Yeah. So we can do the same by like in the script with variables. You know what I mean?
Who wants to write their version up on the board? People here. Anyone here? Anyone else over here? Come on, write some code. Let's all talk about it. Yeah, look. You. Yes. quest for simplification here.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's actually,
But it's not much.
so, yeah, I think rather than just qualify average.
It needs to be more descriptive. This is for sure, right? Like even if it's just the average sense of whatever this is.
Then for sure the X.
And we're assuming that these have been declared, right? Like all these types have been declared up above somewhere.
Oh yeah.
It might, yeah. Dude, so with Facebook, how do you think some of them? It's okay. I'm not interested in rather than at all.
Yeah.
It sounds.
All right. I may as well start with this one, I guess, because it might go by quickly. What do you think about this? Plain zero crash. Also crashed. So you didn't improve it there, I guess, but you didn't make it worse. Why pick on this one?
I guess we still have no idea what it's doing.
I know. I mean, you shouldn't try to like simplify it too much when this is just example code. This is all out of style, right? So here you're converting send, dividing by n, pushing it back into something and counting for some reasons that you know the size is probably already part of the vector, right? I think you missed an opportunity to put more descriptive names here, right? And but you know, this is a certain mindset. Some people like to kind of collapse everything down as much as possible. Maybe it's sort of a 3810 mindset in the MIPS optimization mode or something like that. I don't know. And I think that can be put a little bit to an extreme. Here we have a half and half. Change one variable name, but presumably this is dollars if that's cents, right? So I think we could change that to dollars. We decided to capitalize num and for that pushback. You know, why this? Because slightly faster. Some people think that's better practice. Obviously, pre-increments as opposed to increment because of the return thing is not make a copy of the whole thing. Again, I don't know. Here's what I did, right? I made much more descriptive names. Again, I think I did this. I was in the Python mode, and I did this, so I put an underscore in there instead of camel case. I got rid of that comment altogether. I don't think you need to describe what's going on. It's dollars to cents. Like, you know, come on, you learned that in kindergarten practically. Instead of putting a vague comment about n equals 0, I used my assert from last time and said this should not be true, right? And so it actually throws an assert if that's not true. I don't know about making this into a function. At some point, you should actually do the real work, so why not push it onto a vector? But you know, you can talk about something like that. And I still do most of it.
I think one thing is always if you pick better variable names, then you sometimes need less comments.
Yeah, I think that is a very that's a I won't say a current style of thinking, but a much more precise style of thinking that long function names, long variable names remove a lot of comments. And also, this is like the most hated comment by any practitioner of code, right? Like count plus plus, increment count. Why do people hate that comment? It's sort of dry. Don't repeat yourself, right? Like it's hard to read this any other way than that. The problem is one of the first pieces of code you ever probably saw from like a class, it probably went through and commented every line. Declare a variable x and assign 0 to it, and then increment x, you know, and output x. And so somehow that's gets sort of your initial view of how comments should be made, just sort of annotating every line. And that's really not true at all. Right? So be cautious if you find yourself just sort of doing this kind of thing. I think we talked about this a little bit. Sometimes it's okay, maybe you're breaking down the problem, you want to put a few little placeholders in there, you know, calculate the average, do this, and then you can decide later whether just to remove the comment once the code's there, if it looks self-explanatory enough, just go ahead and keep the code. But, you know, I don't think you so many comments that just sort of, again, we know how to calculate averages, we know how to convert things to cents, we know how to increment something. I don't think any of those are worth and typically, you do not want to say what happened, right? Add one to count. Do this. You really should reserve comments for like a why you did something. So libhungru has a left-hand coordinate system, so flip the y-axis or something like that. Something that, like why is suddenly this coordinate system being changed, right? Well, you did some investigation, realized something about this package you're using, and realized you need a coordinate between the two, and it's worth saying sort of the results of that investigation or the justification for this code that may seem somewhat mysterious to someone else that hasn't gone through that same process. So anyway, think about something sort of complicated, took you a while to puzzle out what was happening there. Good to comment. It's just like you keeping score of each line of code, and that's probably not the right answer. Now these what-style comments are also useful as sort of official documentation, and you should probably be using some tool to produce documentation from that code where it shows like a class system and shows all the methods for the class. You can click on them and see what the inputs are and stuff like that. But that's different from commenting code in some sense to me. That's describing the system. Let's see. Chop, all this crap. Why is this structure here? Where could this bridge possibly lead? This is bridge. This sign doesn't help me much. What a horribly designed street, most inefficient. What does this contraption do? I hate reading other people's code, right? That's what it's like. And even the most simple code, for the most part, I mean, it is amazing. Even something I'm super familiar with, like a try or something like that, and I've seen 100 versions of it. I get your special code, and I'm just like, wow. What's going on here? That's not because the code's bad, it's just unfamiliar to you, and you wrote it, right? But it takes time to get into these sorts of things. Now, of course, formatting is always, nobody with formatting here, it's always tricky on a slide to fit in formatting. So you're a cat people, I guess.
Cats only eat the finest. Not cheap.
Oh, who's got? Okay, what do you think about this condition?
That's pretty good.
This expression.
You could probably split it up into like 2 or 3 conditions.
So basically, it's hard to read, right? I think any condition with lots of ands and things and ors, it's just parsing out what the intent was there is very difficult. So what would you do? You would split it into like what? So maybe sometimes if there's like a bunch of ands, you can also break it into different if statements if you want. Let me see if someone over here has got. What else would you do here? To suffer with it? I mean, in fact, this is actually kind of readable because these are variable names instead of a bunch of greater than something and num greater than 55 and stuff like that.
How about you just create a method that I call inside the if that just returns this Boolean function value?
Yeah, so that's one approach some people like is to collapse it all into a method, hide it. You assume it does something that you want it to do, and if you're not digging into those details, you can ignore it for the most part.
If you're gonna add one line after the if, you can skip it for the widgets.
Okay, well, let's talk about that later. I think I got some other thing for that. That's a different approach, right? So one approach is to turn it into some sort of private helper method or function. If decide to eat, cat eat. That looks like a method to me, should be cat dot decide to eat or something like that, probably uses some information. Or, and this is already halfway there because you're naming these variables instead of doing comparisons, start naming sub clauses of this. Is food cat likes equals is chicken or is seafood, right? And you can collapse down that part into another named thing. And then is high quality equals smells good and is not cheap brand. Now those two actually don't work together in the same way that you need to for this particular statement. But sort of spend some time and name. And I think this is almost more important when it's like num greater than 100 and age less than 10 or something like that. Name what that means, right? I don't know what num greater than 100 and age less than 10 is supposed to capture, but go ahead and do that as a named Boolean and then use that in the condition, and hopefully kind of keeps things more equal. So think about that. Don't be afraid to throw in some intermediaries, basically, and also don't be afraid. I think people just have trouble with bools basically altogether, right? They're like these mysterious things, not like number equals 5. It's like how can something be assigned to be true or false? That seems weird. And, like these are expressions. These are a variable to hold that expression. Take advantage of that ability. I don't know what this one about. I just wrote it. Can't go wrong here, right?
Yeah, because if x is always going to equal 2, and x, it's always going to be 4. And, and you could just have x.
Don't just say sine 4 to x or something like that, right? All right, who's got an opinion on this? Besides sine 4 to x. A lot of discussion. Some of us have some. Okay, so. Yeah.
Formatting.
What do you think?
Just readability.
Oh, I agree with that. Do you like it with brackets? Raise your hand if you like it with brackets. Raise your hand if you like it original without brackets. Who wants a champion no brackets for this case? Someone brought it up a minute ago. Yeah. Pure lines. That's one slight bonus. Anyone else about no brackets?
Yeah, I think it's just nice and simple, so that might not really do is overcomplicated here.
Just keep it simple, right? Why add more syntax? All right, who wants a champion? All this curly brace stuff.
If you want to add functionality later into your statement, then you might just put the statement below when you don't have brackets, and then end up not actually executing it in the if statement.
Yeah, I think that's the argument is that let's say you want to add a debugging statement even in here, like some print out, see out, or something like that. Without brackets, you're sort of, I don't know, you might be tempted to, maybe your editors complain to you, but you sort of force it over, and then weird stuff starts to happen. This is a pretty common mistake, to be honest. And so the argument for always using brackets is to never let that mistake happen. And it happens, right? I mean, don't be shy, admit it. You've done it before. Just force the indent, but it really belongs to the main flow of execution here, right? And so, again, depends what you value, I guess, is sort of preventative medicine here. not letting that kind of thing happen, or do you prefer just sort of like as clean as possible looking code? And again, it's hard to, there's no definitive answer there. Now there's something else here.
We could use a ternary operator instead.
Okay, well, always back to the ternary. Yeah, I agree, right? It's something else here. I use a bit. Okay, so you could do some different math here. That's not what before this. What else?
I guess if you decide not to immediately say no.
Okay, we have a rebel here. Gas. You see that every once in a while, right? I mean, there's some languages that kind of encourage one line or like that. Python or something? Or Python has a short form or something like that. Okay, here's what the code smell people suggest. Why? Why do they want that?
Because potentially be setting yourself up to, instead of comparing 2 to x, to be setting x equal to 2 if you miss an equal.
This is a common mistake. And it's valid, C and C++, because this returns the value of the assignment. So this would be evaluate to 2, and 2 evaluates to true. It's not 0. And so if you said x equals 2, this would always be true, basically. Right? That won't matter what. This prevents that because you can't assign a value into a literal like that. All right, did I just change your life? Are you going to do that now? No. I have a hard time with that. It just makes me cringe. In fact, if I see people doing that, like in intro programming classes, I'm just like, why is your brain so different from mine? Say it this way.
But this scenario only works when we're putting a literal in there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it does seem like a bit of a failure
Yeah,
of
that's
generality here, right? You can't switch it to make it safe that way. So I agree. That's sort of a big flaw in that analysis. But anyway, some of the code people are very purist in their approach. If the way you write it reduces the chance of adding bugs, you should write it that way. And, you know, it's been a long time since I've done a equals instead of double equals, but there's a chance, you know, it's in the morning, who knows what happens. So,
Dot equals.
good job. All I'm saying is when you interview with companies, look carefully at their code style guide. If they have something like that, you know, think about where you can live with it for the rest of your life. Don't bring up the bracket issue again. Yeah, don't dig too deep trying to find meaning in this code. You know? We're computing.
Like, do you like parentheses around that word?
Filter matrix.
You just trust in order operators. You know what I mean? Like, does C++ still have the same kind of operations? I'm sure they do. For braces. I think so. I think params. Well, it's like that thing. It'll still work. Because it's literally like one operation.
All right, who's got something to say here?
Probably parentheses in operation.
Probably what?
Parentheses in operation.
Parentheses here. I don't know. What do you think? Do you want to? I mean, you do have to know the order here. It doesn't hurt, I guess. I think you can. I know some people complain too much about you repeating stuff that's inherent in the expression. Like it seems like you're doing something to force something that's not happening when it would happen anyway. But I know what you're saying. Like,
Overriding add every time, so.
oh yeah, I know. Don't you know? Don't look at what it's doing. I guess that's you're right. You're looking hard, so for sure.
The whole thing is wrapped in if statement, when you could have an if statement that is the opposite, x is less than 0, and then have something here that says return, so that the entire thing isn't like half over.
Okay, so this nesting is an issue here, right? And this is a pretty simple case. You see stuff with like if a for, another if for two, and then another for loop, and another something. And it is really hard to track what executes under what conditions. So one possibility is to make what's called the guard clause, and you basically say if that's not true, you know, break or continue or return depending on what this is embedded inside. And so basically, this only happens if that's not true, and that's essentially the same intent as what this was. But so this fires and then does all this on the side here. This fires and then skips everything else instead, right? And we started having a little debate about this a couple classes ago, I think. The early return out of functions versus one return. But what do you think about that? And the other thing here is, those integers are looking too complicated. Maybe throw those off to a method or function as well. And so you don't have multiple nestings. Just replace some block of that stuff with, you know, something that captures the intent of it. And again, you still at some point have to trace what's actually happening through all those layers, but it kind of helps your brain think about that division a little bit and the abstraction of certain parts of it. And anyway, consider those approaches as well. And you know, notice nothing's that indented anymore. So those of you like to see lines of code, you can sort of see more columns of code this way. You get that benefit. Any other opinion about that versus the original? Wait, what do you think? Kind of like it? Kind of hate it? You have to be careful when you're refactoring. It's pretty, you know, someone works hard to kind of set up these conditions, and it's pretty easy to make your state going the other way, and it's a common source of bugs. So you should kind of check that very carefully when you do that. But I kind of like the way this lays it out a little bit. All right, here's another more complicated. Again,
So we like to do that. That one's big enough for times. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Or maybe it can be condensed into like increments. You know what I mean? Like instead of repetition, we could just do balance. No. Oh yeah. Right. Oh right. just trying to. It's alright. I got you. But no, you're right. The numbers are probably pretty descriptive.
Yeah, I kind of just like the 1.0 for the returns in the cases.
I think it's better to like why is it not static on 1.1? That's the way.
All right, who's got something to say about this? I mean, this is an important code, right? It's part of the banking system or something, so this has got to be rock solid code here. So.
I think the 1.01 and 1.02 can be replaced as 1 plus interest rate.
So you don't, okay, there's sort of two parts of this. Let's stick with an easy one, which is magic numbers in general, literals like this are just sort of a bad idea, right?
Yeah.
They should be named somehow or computed somehow. And you're suggesting that we're going to get a 3% from some internal method or data member or something like that, and we should add 1 to that and sort of calculate that on 5, something like that. Or maybe some method altogether that says give me the growth rate or something like that on this. I think that's a reasonable thing, right? So normally, well, in the context of banking too, this is just horrible, right? Like those numbers change basically, so that's just a bad idea. Anything else?
Since retirement is calling the method and the others are just kind of doing the math, I'd want it all to either do the math right there or all column.
Yeah, we basically had that idea already somehow in our heads, but failed to instantiate it for the other 2 cases here.
Presumably there are other issues relating to the differences between check and savings and retirements. So you should probably put checking into its own class, account and earning a savings into its own class, and retirement into its own class, all inheriting from account.
Yeah, this is a big shift in thinking here, right? To go from, here's this class that and has some flag thing that says what kind of class it is. And then in an object-oriented sense, there's like a base class, and then you derive a checking account class from it, and a savings account class from it, and a retirement class from it. And you basically ask it what, update balance, and it does what it knows how to do based on what kind of account it is, right? So in fact, some kind of a switch like this is considered a code smell, where you're sort of picking different modes internal to a class. And it's sort of hard, I don't know, I still think of classes as kind of big, heavyweight objects that have a lot of, oomph to them, and it's still hard for me to think about having like a base class and then just cracking off these little tiny classes and maybe just changing the way they compute their interest rate or something like that. But from an OO point of view, that's probably the correct way to go. And I think it actually has a lot of advantages, because basically, you would just say, your other code, you would say, account dot, what is this thing called, interest, in some sort of a loop for, account. I'm not going to write this in accounts or something like that. Right, that's not the right syntax. I'm going to ask each account what its interest is. And the polymorphic capabilities of the derived classes let you then, apply this to each one of those classes and get an answer back. And it acts the way it's supposed to act, the way you define that kind of account to act. Now the advantage is I can add in a overseas slush fund account by making a new subclass from here, and I don't have to change any other code. Whereas if I add in my overseas account in this style, everywhere there's some of these switch statements, I got to go and add in that new one and make sure I don't forget it somewhere. And so this sort of embeds all the changes inside the code in multiple places, and updating it gets very difficult. Whereas adding in the subclass basically just allows the magic of polymorphism to figure out what the behavior should be based on what you're asking it to do, right? So basically, tell the object to leave an interest and let it figure out how to do it. Don't try to embed all those cases everywhere in your code. And I think again, this idea that it doesn't end up modifying much other code is a very powerful idea for software gamers. So, what do you think about that? you're up for it. It's hard, I mean, that is sort of, sometimes a little mind blowing to me, like, wow, I really should do it that way. That would be a much more sophisticated way of doing it. But it's hard for me to kind of get in that mindset where I want to start doing it that way. This is like part of class, right? Not the whole thing. No. Don't worry about it. No data numbers, but it's just I took this code from CIS, so exactly what. All right, what do you think about this thing?
You just like think of this class as a method. So you have like if you have a student's class, then this would be a method inside the student's class.
Yeah, so maybe there's sort of misplaced a little bit. Yeah, okay, I'll kind of go with that. What else you notice about sort of like the different services this class provides?
Some of these look like things that should be done by a student, some look like conditions written by an instructor. Who's this for?
Yeah, just a little related to it. You're saying.
I would just say every single one of them pretty much either returns or takes in an ID number. So I feel like, if you made, I don't know exactly what I do, but if you made it like student classes that, that student as an object called this method and the ID was inherent, like that object is the one that's going to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a sign. These are all in the wrong kind of place, right? They belong to student or they belong to some of each that you have to pass on as info. What I'm really kind of thinking about here a little bit is that this idea of sort of class bloat. This God is called the God class. So it says well, one class sort of does everything, right? Everything you can imagine, you scan into this thing, add more and more features. Rather than splitting into like the student class, the teacher class, the classroom class, lunchroom class. Break it up a little bit. This is too broad a topic. The class should have a well-defined purpose here. And there's a bunch of other code smells that are, the same kind of thing. Lazy class, basically doesn't do anything. You sort of moved all the functionality out of it to somewhere else. We have to do the whole thing, right? Figure out what you go. Data class, more like a struct, just has data and setters and getters, doesn't really perform any services. And then this idea that you can also, some classes just have all sorts of weird, general, forward, future-proofing kinds of things to them. And just code we need and then go back and fix it later. Don't try to make it do everything. But again, that idea of sort of making the architecture of your classes, how they relate to each other, is a big deal when you're writing a larger system. You need to kind of think about how things group together and naturally fit together. This is kind of related. You already started kind of bringing this up a little bit. So, what's going on here?
A lot of extra credit.
If you don't want it, all right. You only get a 75 without extra credit. That seems like a weird deal. I call it extra credit, but you only get a C if you don't get it. besides that, what do you see here?
It's kind of like magic numbers where you just have.
Well, they're okay. They're these magic numbers too. There's so many things going here. It's hard to get to the. But this is sort of what I was talking, what you were asking about in the last one. That here's this thing in this course, and it's basically, it really kind of wants to belong to a student almost, or something like that, right? Like, it's not clear where this should fit. Like, you're not really using any information from the course here. Like, this is somehow knows about its projects and its tests and credit. If those were part of the data members for the course, maybe this is a good spot for it. But if only students know about their own values, and this one probably belongs over there. So here, this thing is just using a ton of services from student. Doesn't really provide any of its own data or anything like that. Probably shifts over to student and see if it is better there. So feature envy, methods one class that make sense of use of another. And then, I don't know if these names, man, but like inappropriate intimacy. Classes that interface too much, that know too much about the sort of low-level details of each other and are sort of intertwined too much. And that makes it hard to update one. If I want to update how student holds its grades or something like that, all of a sudden, these other courses that are using sort of low-level getters, they're going to have trouble. We haven't talked about C++ inheritance, but basically this inherits from this. Yeah. All right, so reading any sort of OO class structure thing is complicated, but right with that, but yeah.
Well, it seems like add medical tax would need the base tax, so, and the top class. It's like just from the add something to add to.
So what were you saying? I mean, here we're using base tax and calling this add medical tax comes from the inherited one here, right? It also gets the base tax from it.
But because there's just an empty method column, there's the one with parameter. Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah.
I read all of it that way.
It's harder. I looked at this like, where are we finding things versus like, yeah, I know, I find it very confusing to read this, but.
Would we really need to pass the base tax, initial tax, and parameter when it's a instance variable that?
Well, I mean, maybe you're trying to show that that's not really one you want to use. I mean, yeah, why pass if you have it? That's a good point. What about the overall structure of this thing? That's maybe the.
It almost seems like you could consolidate this down into one class. Your base tax, your initial tax, if you never remember you passing the constructor or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's in the right direction. And the main thing is, so apparently corporate tax, we wanted to somehow get this add medical tax kind of for free, right? We wanted that method. So we inherited from it. Even though, like, why would corporate tax inherit from personal tax? Like, they're not related that way, right? This is bad. So this is a bad effort just to kind of avoid having to rewrite some function or something like that. More fundamentally, this should probably be both of them should be off a base class, and then from that you derive personal tax and corporate tax, rather than this sort of this inappropriate inheritance, right? You don't just grab things from another class just because you want that one thing. You want to say, this thing is an example of this thing here, except for this one specialization or something like that. And that's not true in this case. So be careful about inheriting just to kind of steal methods from something that's not really that related, even though like here they sound sort of related. And here the subclass is really only using one thing from here. That's assignment, using everything except for whatever you want to override and whatever it changes, but generally grab one item out of it.
What's the workaround on this? What's the workaround on this? Is this,
I would actually, so last thing is like finding all those variables like on
All right, what do you think here? This,
what
how
do
do
you-
you improve this code? Or what's wrong with it? Besides,
Maybe salary, mortgage, children, charity should all be like private, variables up at the top, and then so what if compute base changes either any of them, then that change will result in all the
yeah, I
others.
mean, it's weird to have all these parameters here that are like obviously fundamental to the computation and also related throughout the class here. And I think you have a couple choices. You're saying maybe it should be some sort of data member of the class. It also looks like to me these are always going around together. So what does that suggest? These are always together. Make some kind of other structure to hold those things, like a person class or something, or person deductible, class structure or struct if you want to do that. But I don't see maybe not a class basically. So if you see things going around in clumps, it's called data clumping. Then think about formalizing that and making some object that knows about these things and has ways you can access those values. And then either that named person thing can be a data member of the class, or depending on how complicated they are, you can move each one separately as a data member of the class. But it tends to be really bad when you see any kind of method, I think, that has a lot of things added to it is a sign of something weird. There's so much information coming in there. Like the class should somehow know about that if it's computing it. Some information is okay, but too much is bad. And then this idea, you just see the same thing over and over again. Let's formalize that and make that into some kind of class. So data clumps, make a class. And sometimes you see people sort of avoiding the whole class structure altogether. Code some people call that primitive obsession. My new Codeno for basically, start using primitive data types instead of a class. So strings that hold values. This is a person or this is a cat, all in a string instead of an object hierarchy or something like that. And then maybe parallel arrays with things that have different meaning. Anyway, anything you were refusing to move past and built into C++ and turn it into something that's more descriptive, more expressive. That's a bit of an issue. Dead code is a code smell. Why have you comment out these lines of code? I didn't have the heart to kill them. Right? Every line is a child of mine. You see that a lot. You're doing experiments, right? And you want to keep around this old version to sort of like go back to when your experiment doesn't work out. And then you're still not totally convinced by your change, and so you leave it around. And then pretty soon it's just like part of the landscape. You don't think about it anymore. And you just leave it in there. So why is it a bad thing?
It's a big wall of cleaning your editor.
So you gotta skip past it and figure out.
It's kind of what version control
Yeah, it's like, there's other tools to help you with this sort of thing, right? Keep version control, like a branch or something. And then you don't have, you still have a record of it, but you don't have it all embedded in the same piece of code.
I don't know how heavy compiling comments are, but essentially you have to, again.
Yeah, I don't know, like, that's probably not real. I guess you take it to an extreme, right?
If you delete it on the spot, it only takes a few seconds, but if you leave it then other developers read it, it'll take them a little while to figure out if that's something that needs to be deleted.
Well, it kind of makes you a little worried, right? Like, here's this person leaving all these sort of false paths in their code. Like, how much confidence do you have in another developer that that person kind of nailed the final version, right? When you see all these horrible other versions over there, and it looks very experimental, right? And so there's a sort of a mindset to it that it seems a little off. I think it's a hard habit to break. I mean, obviously, when you're doing just some quick little change, I'm not about to leap to GitHub and make a whole new, branch on this thing and do an experiment. I just want to try out one idea, but you should force yourself to clean up your code at some point. So, these are just a few of them. I listed a sort of related blog type article on the Canvas about some code smells. I'm sure on Amazon you can buy like a big book of code smells or something like that, and you get 1,000 of these things. And I've seen courses taught to basically just go through like a code smell a day, and they have this sort of very formal process of like, if you see this, then the fix is to do this to it, and sort of turns it into like a very robotic kind of system. And that seems a little bit weird to me, like you should still be thinking about this in a complex way, not just sort of blindly applying rules and hoping for the best. But I at least find them, at least people that are purists like that, pure object-oriented people, pure code smell people, all have very strong points of view. It's interesting to at least think about those points of view and maybe don't accept it, and they still sort of, move you halfway there or something like that. I think there are some valuable aspects to this that, at least make me think about my code a little bit differently when I'm writing about it. But I don't know about the 2 equals X thing though. Still got to think about that. All right, so I actually did want to just leave some time here now for either get together with your partner and get some work done on the assignment, or try to find a partner. So if you don't have a partner, maybe you can, I don't know, come up here and talk or something like that.
Well, it's actually like a big thing. Yeah, it's ridiculous.